The sky burned red over the royal city of Varelia. Once, the towers had shined like glass and silver. Now, smoke rolled through the streets like dark waves. Buildings fell one after another, their tall spires breaking in fire and dust. The sound of explosions filled the air, followed by the screams of running guards. Inside the citadel, the great palace of the alien queen, panic had taken control. Her royal soldiers ran down marble halls, their boots echoing against the floor. Their armor, once bright and proud, was scratched and smoking. Many threw down their weapons as they ran, their courage gone. The enemies were machines, cold, silver, and fast. They came from the sky, dropping through the fire clouds. They had no faces, only glowing red eyes that hunted everything living. Each step they took left behind black burn marks. And in the middle of that chaos stood one human. He was not born on this world. He had no royal rank, no family name here. Yet when everyone ran, he stayed. He stood in front of the last door that led to the throne chamber. Smoke curled around his armor. The left shoulder plate was cracked, and his gloves were black with soot. But his eyes were calm, steady. He checked his plasma rifle, then turned slightly toward the queen behind him. She sat weakly on the floor, her long silver crown broken in half. Her wings, thin, glass-like, shivered as she breathed. Why do you not run?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Even my guards have fled." The human looked back at her. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Because someone has to stay." Outside, a loud explosion shook the palace. Dust fell from the ceiling. The queen gasped. The human stood straighter, readying his weapon. Moments later, the first group of machines appeared at the far end of the hall. Their glowing eyes locked on the human. They began to move forward in perfect rhythm, metal steps hitting the floor like thunder. The human didn't move. He waited until they were close enough. Then, he fired. Bright plasma bolts cut through the smoke. The first machine fell, its chest bursting with light. The second one leapt forward, claws raised, but the human's rifle barked again. One by one, the attackers fell. But more came, dozens more. The sound of marching metal filled the hall. The human stepped back slowly, reloading. He reached for a grenade, threw it down the corridor, and turned away as the blast ripped through the smoke. The shockwave sent broken armor flying. When the smoke cleared, the walls were blackened, and the air smelled of burning metal. The queen stared in silence. "You could have escaped," she whispered. "You could have lived." The human smiled faintly. "Maybe. But then who would have stopped them from reaching you?" The queen looked away, her eyes full of confusion. Her kind had always seen humans as reckless, emotional, and fragile. Yet here, this one human stood firm while her own kind had run. A heavy crash shook the palace again. The floor cracked beneath them. Far above, another explosion lit the night sky. The human turned toward the sound. "They're breaching the upper gates," he said quietly. "We're running out of time." He looked back at the queen. "There's a service tunnel below the throne room. You can escape through there." She shook her head weakly. "I will not leave my home." The human sighed. "Then I guess neither will I." The silence between them lasted only a few seconds before another alarm screamed. The lights flickered red. The door at the end of the hall began to bend inward. Metal groaned. The machines were trying to break through. He took a deep breath. His armor systems flashed warning signals: low power, low ammo, shield broken. Still, he smiled a little, almost like someone who had made peace with fate. He spoke softly to himself. "One last stand." The queen watched him move closer to the door. He set up fallen pieces of armor as cover, rechecked his rifle, and positioned 2 grenades at his feet. Then he looked back at her one last time. "When this door falls," he said, "run to the throne chamber and lock yourself in. Don't open it for anyone until I say so." She nodded slowly, though tears had started to form. "You're human," she said. "Why do you fight for an alien queen?" He looked at her and answered simply, "Because right now you need me." The door finally burst open with a scream of tearing metal. The machines poured in like a silver tide. Their red eyes glowed through the smoke. The human raised his rifle. "Let's finish this." Gunfire lit the hall. Each shot echoed like thunder. Machines exploded, pieces of glowing metal flying in every direction. The floor was covered in sparks, smoke, and the sound of battle. Still, the human fought. Even as his rifle overheated, even as his armor cracked, he did not fall back. The queen could only watch through tears as he fought against impossible numbers, his figure outlined in fire and smoke. Finally, the rifle clicked empty. The human drew a short blade from his belt and charged forward. The machines met him in a blur of light and steel. For a few moments, the palace echoed with the sound of struggle, and then silence. The queen sat frozen, afraid to move. The air was thick with smoke. Then, through the haze, a shadow moved. It was him, still standing, covered in dust and blood, but still alive. He limped toward her, breathing hard. "They'll send more," he said quietly. "We have to prepare." The queen stared at him with new eyes. "You are not like the others." He gave a tired smile. "No, I'm human." Outside, thunder rolled across the burning sky. The palace shuddered again. The battle wasn't over, only beginning, and the human who stayed had just become the last wall between life and extinction. The palace was dying. Flames crawled up its silver walls like living snakes. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning stone. In the shattered hall, the human stood alone, surrounded by broken machines. His armor was cracked, his helmet dented, and his breathing slow and heavy, but he was still standing. The alien queen looked at him in silence. Her eyes, bright and violet, were wide with disbelief. She had seen soldiers flee. She had seen cities fall. But she had never seen anyone fight like this. He turned toward her and spoke calmly. "We can't stay here much longer. The next wave will come soon." Her voice trembled. "You should leave while you can. You've done enough." He shook his head. "Not enough. Not until you're safe." The queen lowered her gaze. "Why? You owe me nothing." He gave a faint smile. "Maybe not, but I made a promise to protect life, no matter whose it is." Before she could answer, a sound came from the far corridors. Heavy footsteps. The ground shook softly with each step. The machines were regrouping. The human's eyes narrowed. He moved quickly, pulling a small device from his belt and scanning the area. "We have 3 minutes before they reach us," he said. "I need to set traps." He ran to the broken walls, placing metal spheres that blinked with a blue light. Each one hummed softly as it armed itself. The queen watched, confused. "What are those?" "Proximity mines," he said without looking back. "They'll slow them down. Buy us time." She stepped closer. "You seem prepared for war." He gave a small laugh. "Humans usually are." Moments later, the lights flickered again. From deep within the palace, a long metallic scream echoed. Then came the sound of marching hundreds of metal feet. The queen's hands trembled. "There are too many." The human didn't answer. He stood in the center of the hall, tightening his grip on his rifle. "That's what they always say," he muttered. The first wave appeared, stepping through the smoke. Dozens of shining figures with glowing red eyes filled the corridor. The mines detected movement and exploded one after another. Blue fire burst across the hall, tearing metal apart. The walls shook, the floor cracked, but still the machines advanced. The human fired again. Bolts of plasma shot through the air, cutting down one, then another. But for each one that fell, 2 more took its place. The queen could see his hands shaking. His armor was melting under the heat, his weapon close to failure. Yet he did not fall back. He shouted over the noise, "Behind me! Don't move!" She pressed against the wall, watching in awe as the human fought with every breath. He threw a grenade, then dived behind a fallen pillar. The explosion filled the room with white light. When the smoke cleared, half the machines were down. The rest paused for a second, analyzing. Then they began to circle, trying to flank him. He noticed their movement and growled, "Smart little devils." He pulled a knife from his boot and moved quickly, cutting down one that leapt toward him. Sparks flew. Another grabbed his arm, but he twisted, slammed it into a wall, and shot it point blank. The battle was chaos. Metal clashing against armor, plasma flashing through smoke, screams of bending steel. The queen, unable to just watch, grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, a small laser pistol, and fired clumsily. Her shots hit the walls more than the enemy, but the human noticed and shouted, "Nice try," with a grin. For the first time in her life, the queen laughed in the middle of battle. A short, breathless laugh, but real. Then suddenly silence. The last machine fell, its red eye fading to black. The queen stepped forward, trembling. "You did it." The human looked around carefully, scanning the shadows. "No, they'll be back. They always come back." He turned off his rifle's safety light and sat against the wall, breathing heavily. His voice was rough. "We've bought a few minutes. Maybe less." The queen knelt beside him. "You're hurt." He looked down at the burn marks across his chest plate. "It's nothing." She touched the edge of the cracked armor, her expression soft. "Why do you risk your life for me?" He looked at her quietly. "Because someone has to stand between chaos and life. That's what we do." The queen lowered her head. Her people had always called humans unpredictable, emotional, even dangerous. But she was starting to see something else, something far deeper. Before she could speak again, his comms device beeped weakly. He tapped it. A broken voice came through. "Commander, this is Earth Command. We've lost contact with the upper fleet. No reinforcements inbound. Repeat. Hold your ground. You're on your own." The signal faded. Static filled the air. The queen frowned. "They left you?" He gave a tired laugh. "Wouldn't be the first time." She stared at him in disbelief. "Your own kind abandoned you, yet you still fight for mine." He nodded once. "Because it's not about them. It's about what's right." Outside, the distant thunder of explosions rolled closer again. The palace trembled. The next attack was coming. He stood up slowly, reloading the last of his ammunition. "We'll make our stand in the throne room," he said. "It's stronger. Narrow entrance, good defense point." The queen hesitated. "And if we fall?" He looked at her, his expression calm. "Then we fall standing." Together, they moved down the long hallway filled with dust and broken light. The sound of burning stone followed them. As they reached the massive throne doors, the human stopped for a moment. He turned and looked at the ruined hall behind them. Scorched, broken, littered with twisted machines. He whispered quietly, "I've seen battlefields before, but never for a cause like this." The queen glanced at him. "Then why stay?" He smiled faintly. "Because the universe needs to remember that humans don't run." He sealed the throne doors behind them and took position near the entrance. The queen climbed onto her throne, her wings faintly glowing in the dim light. Outside, the machines were gathering again. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Inside, one human stood ready, his rifle warm, his eyes unshaken. The queen whispered softly, almost to herself. The guards ran, but the human stayed. The human raised his weapon toward the sound of the coming storm. "Let them come," he said quietly. "I've got plenty left." And in that dying palace, surrounded by fire and smoke, a single human soldier became the wall that the galaxy would never forget. The throne room was silent except for the soft hum of fires burning outside. The walls were tall and dark, carved from smooth stone that shimmered faintly under the dim emergency lights. Smoke drifted through broken windows, painting the air in shades of gray. The human stood near the entrance, weapon in hand, eyes fixed on the heavy doors that kept the outside world away. Behind him, the alien queen sat on her throne, once a symbol of power, now only a shadow of a broken empire. Hours passed in quiet tension. The machines had stopped their advance for now. Only the distant thunder of falling towers broke the silence. The queen's voice came softly through the still air. "You don't rest, do you?" The human didn't turn. "Not when danger's near." She tilted her head slightly. You've been fighting since the first attack. You bleed, you burn, and yet you keep standing. Why? He gave a tired smile. Because someone has to. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, the queen rose slowly from her throne. Her movements were graceful but weak. She walked toward him, the light from the fires reflecting off her silver skin. "There's something you should know," she said quietly. He looked at her, curious but calm. "Go on." She hesitated before speaking again. "The enemy isn't just here to kill me. They want something I carry." The human frowned. "Something you carry?" She nodded, lowering her voice. "Inside me is the seed of Genesis. This ancient, older than my world, older than yours. It holds the code that creates life." He blinked. "You mean, it can make life?" "It can make or destroy it," she whispered. "The one who controls the seed can rebuild entire worlds, or end them." The human let out a slow breath. "So that's why they came." "Yes," she said, her eyes dark. "They don't want to destroy Varelia. They want to take the seed and use it as a weapon." He turned toward the door again, his jaw tightening. "Then they'll have to go through me." The queen looked at him sadly. "You don't understand. If they take it, the galaxy will fall. No army could stop them. Even your people would suffer." He faced her fully now. "Then we make sure that never happens." Her voice softened. "You speak as if you could stop the stars from falling." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I can't, but I can slow them down." For the first time, the queen almost smiled. "You are strange, human. Your kind was always feared, too emotional, too unpredictable. Yet you stand here, ready to die for someone not of your blood." He looked at her with calm eyes. "Maybe that's what makes us human." She turned away, her mind full of memories. Of her people fleeing, of the guards abandoning her. The only one who stayed was this wounded soldier from a distant planet. Then the ground shook again. A deep rumble rolled through the palace. Dust fell from the ceiling. The emergency lights flickered. The human raised his rifle, eyes sharp. "They're back." He moved quickly to the wall console and checked the motion sensors. Dozens of red dots glowed on the screen, moving closer. "They found another way in," he said. The queen gasped. "The lower tunnels?" He nodded. "Yes, they're coming from below." Without hesitation, he grabbed a small light from his belt and started toward the stairs that led downward. "Stay here," he said firmly, but the queen followed. "I'm coming with you." He stopped, looking back. "It's not safe." "Nowhere is safe," she said quietly. "And I will not hide while others fight for me." He sighed. "Fine, but stay behind me." They descended into the dark tunnels beneath the throne room. The air grew cold and heavy. Old pipes lined the walls, dripping water onto the cracked floor. The sound of metal footsteps echoed faintly ahead. The human moved like a shadow, slow, controlled, every step silent. The queen followed closely, clutching a small light crystal. When they reached the lower chamber, they saw them, half a dozen machines scanning the area, searching for a way up. The human took cover behind a broken pillar and whispered, "Stay low." He aimed carefully and fired. The first machine's head burst in sparks. The others turned instantly, red eyes glowing brighter. The queen gasped, but the human was already moving, rolling behind cover, firing again, reloading with smooth precision. His movements were fast but calm, trained. One of the machines charged forward. The human met it halfway, slamming his blade into its chest and kicking it aside. Sparks showered the tunnel. Another fired a plasma bolt that grazed his arm. He gritted his teeth but didn't stop. Within minutes, all 6 machines were destroyed. The tunnel fell quiet again, except for the dripping water. The queen stepped out from behind a pillar, her voice soft but filled with awe. "How do you do that?" He wiped the smoke from his visor. "Training, experience, luck." She smiled faintly. "No, faith." He looked at her, surprised. "Faith? Yes," she said gently. "You believe in something. Maybe not gods or destiny, but in your duty, in what's right." He looked away. "Maybe that's enough." They started back up the stairs, but halfway through, The ground trembled violently. A massive explosion roared below. The tunnel shook, stones falling from the ceiling. The queen stumbled, and the human caught her arm. "We have to move." They ran up the steps as the walls began to crumble. Smoke and heat filled the tunnel. Behind them, red light glowed. The enemy had breached the lower levels completely. When they reached the throne room again, the doors shuddered from impact. The machines were already breaking through. The queen turned to him, fear flashing in her eyes. "They're coming." He stood tall, raising his weapon. "Then we stand." The queen touched his arm gently. "If we die here, the seed dies with me. The galaxy dies with me." He looked at her steadily. "Then we make sure that doesn't happen." Outside, the sound of metal feet grew louder, closer. The palace walls trembled again. The queen whispered, almost to herself, "You fight for a secret that could destroy everything." He replied quietly, "No, I fight for the chance that it might save us instead." And as the first cracks split through the throne doors, he reloaded his weapon and took his place before her throne. Once again, the last wall between darkness and life. The palace shook like a wounded beast. Each impact from the enemy's cannons echoed through the throne room walls. The once grand hall was now filled with smoke and falling dust. The queen sat near the broken throne, her breathing uneven, her silver crown cracked. The human stood in front of her, motionless, silent, ready. His armor was burned, his left arm bandaged with a torn piece of alien cloth. His weapon hung low but steady. He had not slept, not even for a second. Outside, the machines were gathering for their final assault. The ground trembled beneath their march. The air itself seemed to buzz with their energy. The queen whispered, "There are too many." He didn't answer at first. His eyes stayed locked on the main door, now glowing red from heat. "Numbers don't matter," he said quietly. "Position does." She looked at him in confusion. "Position?" He pointed toward the hall's narrow entrance. "They have to come through there. One path, one choke point. That's how we make them pay." The queen stared at him, realizing his plan. "You mean, trap them inside?" He nodded. "Exactly." For the next few minutes, he moved quickly, faster than the queen thought possible in his condition. He set explosives behind broken pillars, lined up fallen armor as barriers, and dragged pieces of wreckage into strategic cover points. The queen tried to help, but her strength was fading. "You plan like you've fought 1,000 battles," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Feels like 1,001. When everything was ready, he stood in the center of the hall and looked around one last time. The traps were armed. The rifle was loaded. The grenades were ready. Then came the sound, the sharp, splitting scream of the outer gates giving way. The queen froze. "They're inside." He nodded calmly. "Stay behind the throne. Don't move no matter what happens." She hesitated, then obeyed. Her heart pounded as she crouched behind the throne, watching through the cracks. The first explosion came from the far end of the corridor, metal clashing, the thunder of marching feet. The red glow of enemy eyes filled the dark hall. The human stood tall, his silhouette framed by smoke and fire. The machines advanced in a tight line, moving fast and silent. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. "Come on," the human muttered. "Just a little closer." The first mine exploded. The blast lit up the corridor in white light, tearing through the front line of machines. Metal fragments flew like deadly rain. The human opened fire. His rifle blazed bright blue, cutting through the chaos. Each shot hit with precision, every movement controlled. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. The queen could only watch. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. The sight of one human standing against an army was something she had never imagined possible. He shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "You'll have to do better than that." The machines surged forward again. Plasma bolts scorched the walls. The air filled with the sound of war. The human ducked behind cover, rolled across the floor, fired again. His grenades exploded one after another, turning the narrow passage into a tunnel of flame. Still, the enemy came, A blast hit near his feet, sending him crashing to the ground. His armor smoked, his chest burned, but he forced himself up. The rifle was gone. Melted. He pulled his knife instead. The queen gasped. No! Stop! But he didn't stop. He charged straight into the swarm of machines. He moved fast, almost invisible in the smoke. The blade flashed in his hands, cutting, striking, breaking circuits and steel. Sparks burst around him as each enemy fell. He fought like a storm, violent, precise, unstoppable. Yet the machines were endless. One struck his side, throwing him against a wall. Blood darkened his armor. He coughed, struggled to stand again. The queen couldn't stay hidden any longer. She stepped out from behind the throne, her voice trembling but strong. Leave him alone. A dozen red eyes turned toward her. The human saw it and shouted, No! Get back! But it was too late. The machines raised their weapons toward the queen. Without thinking, he ran. Faster than he thought he could. He threw himself between her and the attack. The plasma bolts hit his back, tearing through armor and burning flesh. He fell to one knee, breathing hard, smoke rising from his wounds. The queen screamed, Why would you do that? He gritted his teeth. Because that's what we do. We protect. She knelt beside him, panic in her eyes. You'll die. He gave a weak smile. Not today. He pressed a button on his wrist pad. The traps hidden across the hall flashed red, then detonated all at once. A chain of explosions tore through the palace, shaking the ground like an earthquake. The machines were thrown into the air, their red eyes going dark. Fire and smoke swallowed the hall. When the dust finally settled, silence returned. The queen looked around in disbelief. The walls were scorched black, the floor covered in twisted metal. Every enemy in sight was destroyed. She turned to the human, who was now lying on his side, breathing weakly. His armor was shattered. His face was pale beneath the dirt and blood. She whispered, You saved me again. He managed a faint grin. You owe me one. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. I owe you more than that. The human tried to sit up but failed. It's not over. They'll send more. The queen touched his shoulder gently. Then let them come. They will find no victory here. She stood, spreading her wings wide, the light from the fires reflecting off them like silver glass. They think I am weak. They think I hide behind others. But today, they will see the truth. He looked up at her, his vision fading. You sound like a queen again. She smiled softly. You sound like hope. Outside, the metallic roar of the next wave echoed through the burning city. The siege wasn't finished, it was only beginning. The queen placed a hand on his chest and whispered, Rest, human. You've done enough. He closed his eyes for a moment, his breathing slowing. Wake me when they're here, he muttered. And as the next tremor shook the palace, she looked toward the door with new strength in her eyes. Because now she understood. The guards had fled, but the human stayed. And as long as he still drew breath, the queen was not alone. The fires of the palace still burned long after the battle ended. Ash fell like dark snow from the open ceiling, glowing orange under the distant lightning. The human lay beside the broken throne, his chest rising and falling slowly. The queen sat near him, her silver crown twisted and blackened by smoke. Outside the walls, the sound of marching returned. A new army approached, but this time there was no rush, no reckless charge. The steps were measured, controlled. The queen stood up, her wings trembling but proud. He's coming, she said softly. The human's eyes opened just a little. Who? She looked toward the burning gates. The one who commands them all. The door exploded inward. Through the smoke, a tall figure stepped into the ruined hall. It was a machine but different from the others. Taller, built from black alloy, with glowing blue lines that pulsed like veins. Its head moved slowly, studying the destruction around it. When it spoke, its voice was deep and human-like. Impressive defense. One man, one queen, and a hall full of corpses. The human pushed himself up on one arm, grimacing in pain. You must be the big one in charge. The commander turned its glowing eyes on him. You are human. Last I checked, the man muttered. The machine tilted its head. You fought alone. You survived what 1,000 of my soldiers could not. That makes you interesting. The queen stepped forward. Leave him alone. This is between you and me. The commander ignored her. Human, why fight for her kind? You owe these aliens nothing. You could have fled. You could have lived. The human looked down at his burned hands. I could have, he said quietly. Then he met the commander's gaze. But I didn't. The machine's blue eyes narrowed. Why? The human's voice hardened. Because running isn't what humans do when someone they protect is still breathing. The hall went silent. The commander studied him for a long moment. A flawed species, it said finally. Driven by emotion, guided by weakness. And yet, it stepped closer, its heavy feet echoing on the stone floor. You've earned something few have. My attention. The queen moved quickly, stepping between them. You'll get nothing here but fire and ruin. The commander tilted its head again, almost curious. You defend him now? I defend what is right, she said firmly. The human gave a weak laugh. That's new. She looked back at him with a faint smile. You taught me. The commander raised its arm. The energy core in its palm began to glow, humming with deadly power. Enough of this, it said. The queen dies first. The human didn't think. He grabbed a broken metal spear near his side and threw it with all his strength. It hit the commander square in the chest. Sparks flew, and the machine staggered back a step. Not today, the human growled. The commander turned its glowing eyes back toward him. Brave, but foolish. With a roar of energy, it charged. The ground cracked under its weight. The queen screamed as the human rolled aside, barely dodging the strike. The commander's fist smashed through the marble floor, shattering it like glass. The human scrambled to his feet and picked up a fallen plasma rifle. It sparked but still worked. He fired at the commander's chest. Bolts of blue energy slammed into the metal armor, scorching deep holes, but not deep enough. The machine didn't stop. It swung its arm, sending the human flying against a wall. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. The queen rushed forward, grabbing a long spear from the floor. With a cry, she drove it into the commander's shoulder joint. The metal hissed and burned. The commander turned its head slowly toward her. You think that will stop me? Not yet, she whispered. The spear's embedded core started to glow, then exploded. The blast tore off the commander's left arm, throwing it backward into the fire. It crashed against the wall with a thunderous sound. The human coughed, pulling himself up. Nice hit. The queen's voice trembled. Did we stop it? Smoke filled the room. Then came the sound of grinding metal. The commander rose again, its single arm reaching out. You damaged my frame, it said calmly. But I am not finished. The human wiped blood from his mouth. Neither are we. He looked around desperately and saw a cracked power conduit sparking near the ceiling. He picked up his rifle, aimed, and fired. The beam hit the conduit. It exploded, sending a rain of blue fire across the hall. Electricity arced through the metal, crawling across the walls, and into the commander. The machine convulsed, its body locking up as the surge ripped through its systems. His blue eyes flickered, then went dark. The human fell to his knees, exhausted. That better have done it. The queen moved closer, staring at the smoking remains. The air smelled of ozone and burning steel. Then, faintly, the commander's eyes flickered once more. He spoke in a distorted voice. You cannot stop what is coming. The queen frowned. What do you mean? The voice crackled again. I am only one of many. My fleet is already on its way. The human's heart sank. A fleet. The commander's head dropped to the side. The light in its eyes faded completely. For a moment, there was silence again. Then the human said, We need to move. The queen shook her head. There's nowhere to go. The city is ash. The skies belong to them. Then we make our stand, he said. She looked at him. Again. He smiled faintly. It's what I'm good at. The queen knelt beside him. You shouldn't even be standing. You're wounded. He laughed softly. I'll rest when I'm dead. She looked into his eyes for a long time. There was something in them, something even machines could never understand. Resolve, defiance, humanity. The queen whispered, if we are to fall, let us fall together. The human nodded. Together. Outside, the sky turned red. The first shadows of the enemy fleet began to darken the horizon. And deep in the ruins of the citadel, the last human and the last queen prepared for the battle that would decide both their worlds. The horizon burned red as the alien fleet descended from the clouds. Thousands of dark ships filled the sky, glowing with cold blue light. Their engines screamed through the storm, shaking what remained of the royal citadel. The queen stood beside the human on the highest balcony, wind whipping through her hair, her silver crown cracked but shining faintly in the flames. Below them, the once great city was nothing but rubble and smoke. Every tower was broken, every street burned, and yet 2 figures still stood tall against the storm. The human checked his rifle. Its energy core was nearly dry. He had a single grenade left and a half-broken combat knife strapped to his thigh. His armor was battered, his left arm wrapped tight with alien cloth. The queen looked at him. They will come for me first. He nodded. They'll have to go through me. A faint, tired smile crossed her face. They already did. He smirked back. And they failed. Above them, the sky split open as the first wave of dropships began to fall. The sound was like thunder and fire combined. The queen's wings unfolded, bright and sharp against the smoke. You could still leave, she said softly. Your escape craft still works. You could make it. He shook his head. And leave you here? Not happening. You'll die, she said. He looked at her, eyes steady. Maybe, but not alone. The first drop pods hit the ground, exploding open. Hundreds of machines poured out. Gleaming, perfect, heartless. They moved like a tide of steel, heading straight toward the palace. The human raised his rifle. Here we go again. The queen stepped forward, her voice rising through the chaos. Let them come. And they came. The machines climbed the palace walls, their red eyes glowing through the smoke. Plasma bolts tore through the air. The human fired back, every shot hitting clean, every reload smooth despite his wounds. He moved like instinct, ducking, rolling, firing. His body screamed with pain, but his mind was calm. The queen summoned what remained of her power. Her wings glowed bright white, and with each movement, arcs of light shot outward, cutting through the machines. She fought beside the human, not as royalty, but as a warrior. The courtyard below became a sea of wreckage and fire. But still, the machines kept coming. The human shouted over the noise, "They just don't stop." The queen's face was set in determination. Neither do we. A massive explosion shook the ground. One of the alien ships landed directly outside the palace, crushing the gates under its weight. From within stepped something far larger than the commander before. 10 feet tall, black armor gleaming, carrying a blade made of pure plasma. The human's eyes narrowed. Guess that's their general. The queen took a step forward, but the human raised a hand. No, this one's mine. She hesitated. You can't fight that alone. He gave a small grin. Watch me. He walked across the burning floor, rifle in one hand, knife in the other. The alien general turned toward him, its mechanical voice calm and cold. You are human? That's right. You killed the commander. You destroyed my soldiers. Why? The human's eyes burned with quiet fire. Because you came for her. The general tilted its head. You fight for a queen that is not of your kind. I fight for someone who didn't run, the human said. That's all that matters. The general raised its plasma blade, the light casting long shadows across the hall. Then die for her. They charged. The human dodged the first swing, the blade missing him by inches. The heat singed his armor. He fired point-blank into the general's chest 3 shots, each one sparking off armor. The general countered with a massive strike. The human blocked with his forearm plate. It shattered instantly, sending him crashing backward. He hit the wall hard, coughing blood. But before the machine could finish him, he rolled, grabbed a fallen spear, and drove it upward into the general's side. Sparks exploded. The machine roared. The human pressed forward, pushing with everything he had left. "Come on!" The general grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You cannot win," it said. The human gasped, his vision fading. "Maybe not." He reached down, pulling the last grenade from his belt and pressing it against the general's chest. "But I can make sure you lose too." He pulled the pin. The explosion tore through the hall like thunder. When the smoke cleared, the general was gone. Its metal body torn apart, its blade melted. The human lay on the floor, motionless. The queen ran to him, falling to her knees beside his body. "No!" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Not like this." His armor was cracked open. His breathing was shallow. He opened his eyes slightly and smiled faintly. "Told you, not alone." Tears rolled down her face. "You foolish, brave creature." He coughed weakly. "Did we win?" She looked around. The army outside was retreating. The fleet above was turning away. "Yes," she whispered. "You did." He closed his eyes, relief softening his face. "Good." She leaned closer. "Please stay with me." He smiled again, barely whispering, "Just rest a minute." Then his hand fell still. The queen froze. For a long time she didn't move. The fires burned low. The sky began to clear. The sounds of battle faded into silence. At last she stood. She lifted his broken body gently in her arms. Her wings spread wide, glowing against the smoke. When the surviving soldiers and citizens returned, they found her standing there, alone, holding the fallen human like a sacred figure. And from that day, across her world, a new legend was born. They said that when the guards ran, one human stayed. They said he faced an army and a fleet, and never turned his back. They said he saved their queen not for reward, but because it was right. And deep in the halls of the rebuilt citadel, a statue was carved in his honor. A man with no name, standing tall beside the queen, facing the sky. Beneath it, words were etched into stone. He stayed when others fled. He fought when hope was gone. He was human,